Hello, ladies and gents. Still got my dicky bar. I can't bother to take it off. But anyway, I want to influence the youth today. Young teenagers, mature teenagers, young adults, mature adults, even OAPs. You know, OAP, retired old age pensioner. You want to influence the youth today. You want to keep your mind occupied. Keep yourself doing something methodical. Give you something, a bit of compassion to wake up in the morning and keep yourself methodical and practice. Anyway, module DD211, understanding politics. We're going to reference our reading so we know what we're reading and we go, if you're doing a bit of artwork or doing a bit of cleaning, you can always do playback on YouTube or Castbox or Spotify, whichever device you use for recording your reading. Understanding Politics, Ideas and Institutions in the Modern World, edited by Geoff Andrews, Agnes Shijaki, Andy O'Kane, Ria Prokhorovnik, and Dan Taylor. The book is pressed the Open University Walton Hall, Milton Keynes. First published in 2015, second edition 2022. It's copyrighted 2015, 2022, the only Open University Press. We're on page 90. Where is politics done? Before, remember, where is politics done? Politics can be done in your living room. Politics can be done in a phone box. Politics can be done in a theatre. Politics can be done, as we know, Parliament, the Welsh ceremony, White House. Where is politics done? It can be done in a virtual space, such as Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or even WhatsApp video call. Anywhere necessary where you want to talk about politics, politics can be done between two people, two political actors, even normal mediocre individuals. I'd say I'm a bit above mediocre because I'm obviously it's my academics. I'm not the best at education politics, but I'm above the mediocre society that try to become critics in society. My voice should be supported. My opinions should make a matter. Anyway, page 90. Where is politics done? Chapter 3. Figure 5. The occupied DC camp and Mickelson Square in Washington, DC, 2011. The spaces the protests occupied were a significant part of the political statement they were making. In addition to the camp at Sokoti Park, protesters camped outside the European Central Bank in Frankfurt and gathered outside the Bank of England in London, in a financial district in Paris, and in the plaza beneath the HSBC headquarters in Hong Kong, amongst others, by making themselves physically visible in such spaces and by trying to disrupt the business of the economic and political elite. Protesters tried to dispute symbolically and literally what they preserved as the structures and spaces from which the oppression of and inequality emanted by expressing their views on the street. Many were also communicating a disillusionment with institutional politics, substituting tools of political engagement such as voting, which many saw as ineffective with the political action in the streets. As many occupier sites, protesters participated in the open air debates and forums, making the additional point that democracy needed to be more participatory and inclusive. Although the Occupy movement dissipated within 5 months, the movement's political concerns and tactics continued to influence political and social movements across the globe. In fact, Occupy itself was at least partially influenced by the tactics employed by Egyptian protesters who occupied Cairo and many other squares in Egypt. Beginning January 2011, in what part of the long and protracted event, even as the Arab Spring, millions of Egyptians occupied public squares to demand an end to the authoritarian regime of President Hosni Mubarak. In turn, the Occupy movement influenced other protest movements and broader debates on public access to an ownership of urban spaces. Page 92, conclusion. This chapter began from the premise that the order to justice to the question of where politics is done. We must reflect on two separate but not unrelated matters. The matter of space in which politics is done, the space of politics, and the matter of politics of space. Within this chapter to the matter of the space of politics, an introduction you to three kinds of space in which politics is done. Legislative spaces, judicial spaces, and private spaces by looking at the examples of the Senate as a legislative space, the US Supreme Court a judicial space, the ancient Athenian Agora both a legislative and judicial space, and the Ottoman Sultan's harem a private space. You were invited to consider the historically and geographically distinct forms of these kinds of spaces. The diverse political actors can inhabit them, and a variety of political activity that can take place within them. Working through this eclectic of a set of examples, you also saw that, on the one hand, the answer to the question of where politics is done depends on your chosen definition of politics. Yet, on the other hand, whether we define politics narrowly as that which concerns the state, or more broadly as, say, the exercise of power, there is no shortage of politics in what might seem the least likely of places. While politics is certainly done at the Senate, as its citizens. Assemblies of ancient Athens and at the courts of Ottoman sultans is also done by more of the modest or less visible places in today's living rooms at ancient Athenian symposia and in the secluded space of the harem. Section 3 of the chapter introduces you to the matter of the politics of space. It invites you to consider a space in which we do politics are not mere backdrops to our political actions. Power and politics are also exercised through spaces. By encouraging and enabling certain activities and discouraging or disabling others. What is more, as you saw the example of the Occupy movement, the ways in which space is used and allocated, that is, question of who has the right to use particular space and how, are also objects of political struggle. Finally, contests over space can also serve as metaphors for broader political contests or, indeed, be stages for quite literal struggle over how best to organise communities and societies. How do we study politics? This chapter 4 is by Richard Heffernan and Rhea Prokhovenik. Introduction. We can study politics in several ways, some more systematic and others keeping an eye on what's happening at home and abroad. Reading, watching or listening to political news regularly and discussing political issues with friends and family are always of keeping up to date with the current events. Through listening to politicians and pundits, we also gain access to political opinion. We can also study politics more systematically through university politics courses. There are at least 4 ways of studying politics in a university setting. We can examine the ideas that political theorists in the past and present have developed. We can explore the different ideas and ideology frameworks that help structure our political beliefs. We can look closely at the political institution through which formal politics is conducted to consider how politics is done in individual countries, in specific regions or by political actors, and compare such countries, regions or actors on either a case study basis or by comparing several cases. We can take our international perspective on political issues by exploring how countries and various national and international actors interact with one another on a global stage. This chapter explores these different ways of studying politics. Studying politics. The study of politics often begins with reflecting on political events, on what has happened or is happening. What can be anything from the election outcomes or a political protest to a policy measure or the act of an individual. Everything can, to some extent, have the potential to be political. Thus, the study of what has happened or is happening can lead us to examine the activists of the government, but it can also involve exploring the opinion an individual has or the actions they undertake. Political study can be triggered by curiosity about what has happened or is happening, which can then be enriched by exploring why such things happen. We can understand political events by investigating them more deeply, looking at them in context, weighing up different interpretations of what happened, and thus seeking explanation for their occurrence. Along with what and the why, political study can focus on seeking explanation of the impacts or the consequences of the event in question. Anyone can study what, why, and with what impacts simply by examining or analysing political events such as elections, political speeches, public policies, lawmaking, and constitutional crises. Any interested individual can engage in such inquiry. As well as beginning with curiosity about a political event, political study is often prompted by a question. For instance, political journalists and commentators study politics by the very act of reporting politics. They ask and provide answers to questions about political event. What is a political event in question? Who are the different actors involved in this event? Who has a stake in understanding what happened? Can this political event be compared to previous ones? How will it affect various groups and interests? Is its meaning relatively uncontested or different? People have very different views about what it means. Answering these kind of questions is obviously part of the commentator's job, but even what the reporting of politics involves a selection of some questions over others, and the highlighting some answers over others. The information that is generated by political study, including the questions and answers that reporters and commentators feed into political debate, help us as well as those who do politics for a living to make better sense of society. This is because, as the saying has it, information is power. The better informed we are, the more capable we are of making sense of the political world. Those who engage in politics, politicians, citizens, or other political actors, ought to be distinguished from those who study politics, academics, or scholars. These two groups may overlap, but it is possible to engage in politics without studying it and studying politics without engaging in it. Anyone who can study politics, there is no entry requirement, and no one can be prevented from doing so in free society. Some people, however, can spend more time than others studying politics, and as a result, some are better placed to study politics than others. Such foremost among them politicians, journalists, commentators, and politics academics have more time than the average individual to devote to the study of politics, and because they possess more knowledge of interest in politics, they might be better at making sense of what they study. Such people are usually well versed in the political history and traditions of our country. They have a more in-depth knowledge of the debates that have categorized politics, and they have a firmer appreciation through previous study of the key concepts, ideas, and theories that help us make sense of politics. This need not imply that their opinions are more reliable or valuable than those of less well-resourced citizens. Even it might mean that their opinions may be taken more seriously, or that they are paid more attention. Expertise, the possession of specialist knowledge, plays a key role in the study of politics, even if one need not to be an expert to study politics, and so, like any other endeavour, political study has become professionalised. Professionals develop and deploy the key skills and makes studying politics easier. For instance, political commentators, journalists, and public intellectuals spend their lives collecting questions and providing answers, with which to inform and persuade the public. Politicians study politics in order to help them better engage with political processes, perhaps to change or to improve them. By contrast, the task of political science is not much to provide daily commentator on politics or always deal with the current issues in politics, but rather it is to focus on the fundamental features of how politics works and to explain why things are the way they are. Stoker, 2013, page 174. I'm going to keep that there because I don't go too far ahead of my next. I think there'll be another assignment after that. So I'm going to finish that there. Why do we study politics. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I will get back to the rest of that chapter at a later date. Thank you, take care, one love, and speak soon. Page 102.